Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Spectacular Spirit Storm, Controlling Chaos in the Cloud. So we chose that title because the industry genuinely feels stormy currently. And as an industry, we have high duty pressures rising, we've got stock values increasing, compliance scrutiny tightening, export complexity growing, and production scaling. So the question is not whether you can grow, it's whether your systems can support that growth without creating risk. So today we will show you how forward-thinking distilleries, bottlers, and bonded sites are taking control. First of all, let's do some introductions. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Sam Abare and I lead the commercial development of Bottle ERP here at Catalyst, working with distilleries and bottlers across the UK as they scale and modernise their operations. And I'm joined by Imad Malik, our Director of Bottle ERP, who leads the strategic and technical vision behind the platform. Now, let's set expectations for today's session. Today is built around 4 outcomes. First, clarity on cloud versus legacy and why that distinction matters now more than ever. Second, an operations first view of bulk spirit management and barrel tracking done properly. Third, a live look at WMS Go, our mobile warehouse layer. And finally, tax and compliance, navigating what we call the tax storm with automated accuracy. This is about clarity and infrastructure, not just software. So before we go into Bottle ERP, let's start with the foundations. Why NetSuite? Because lo and behold, foundations do matter. NetSuite is a cloud-based platform with over 40,000 customers globally. This is enterprise-grade infrastructure used globally across a very wide range of industries. It upgrades automatically twice a year, so you are never version locked. You are never trapped on aging software that becomes more expensive and fragile over time. Bottle ERP is built natively within NetSuite, so we upgrade in parallel. Continuous innovation without disruptive re-implementations. At its core, NetSuite began life as a finance system, which matters. This means strong data integrity and reporting from day one. But around that core sits CRM, inventory management, manufacturing and supply chain, and e-commerce functionality all out of the box. That is what gives us true end-to-end platform, from lead to cash, from CRM through production to finance. And that unified foundation is what allows Bottle ERP to operate as a genuine grain-to-glass solution without stitching separate systems together. So you might ask, what are the benefits of an established cloud solution? Well, let me tell you, this is where cloud architecture really changes the game. First, real-time visibility, a single source of truth across production, warehouse, and finance, accessible from anywhere. Second, automated regulatory compliance, built-in excise management and HMRC reporting, reduce human error and audit risk. Third, scalability. You can add new production lines, bonded sites, or international entities without rebuilding your infrastructure. Fourth, enterprise-grade security and disaster recovery. Your data is protected far beyond what local hardware can realistically ever offer. And finally, continuous innovation. New capabilities delivered automatically without manual upgrades. In a growing spirits business, that combination gives you control and confidence. Cloud is not modernizing IT, it's about future-proofing your operations. Bottle ERP is a purpose-built management platform for the alcohol industry. Everything you see here has been designed around the realities of spirit production, bonded warehousing, and excise compliance. We have taken the power of a full enterprise platform and engineered it specifically for distilleries and bottlers. From grain in the field, through mashing, fermentation, distillation, into cask and maturation, through bottling, warehouse and distribution, right through to liquid in your customer's hand. Every core function operates inside one connected environment. So this is your production planning, your cask management, your warehouse execution, duty and LPA automation, location control, and embedded quality checks. This is grain to glass infrastructure built for scale. This is not adapted manufacturing software. It is infrastructure designed for how distilleries actually operate. So whether you're producing 50,000 litres or managing multiple bonded sites, the system grows with you and you are covered at every step. What you're looking at here is the entire production and commercial life cycle in one connected flow. From procurement of raw materials through production and liquid movement into cask and maturation, through bottling and finished goods, into warehouse and distribution, and ultimately into sales and reporting. There are no breaks in the chain, no duplicated data entry, no spreadsheet reconciliation between departments. Every movement of liquid, stock adjustment, strength change, cost implication, all feeding one live data model. That is what creates true visibility. And this is not just about efficiency, it's about confidence in your LPA numbers, your stock valuation, your reporting, and confidence when investors or HMRC ask questions, because everything traces back to operational truth. What makes this powerful is not the individual components. It's the fact that everything is connected. So Bottle ERP brings finance, CRM, inventory, production, and supply chain into one unified platform. So when production moves, stock updates. When stock updates, reporting updates. When reporting updates, finance reflects reality, which means no silos, no separate systems telling different stories, no multiple versions of the truth. So your production team, warehouse team, and finance team are all working off the same live data, which changes decision making. It becomes faster, cleaner, and more confident. This is what operational control actually looks like. In addition to being all connected, we've taken it one step further with WMS Go, which is our mobile warehouse layer built specifically for the spirits industry. It closes the gap between physical warehouse and the digital system. It's device agnostic, running on standard smartphones and tablets. Operators scan, locations validate, and movements are captured in real time. This means stock transfers, cask movements, finished goods picking, goods in, goods out are all recorded at the point of action. No clipboard notes, no rekeying data later, no lag between physical movement and updates. Scan it, validate it, capture it, which gives you real-time updates, zero lag, and full traceability. Accuracy improves because errors are prevented at the source. And when the warehouse accuracy improves, compliance becomes considerably easier. This gives you stronger LPA numbers, clearer stock visibility, and a complete audit trail. And importantly, it's licenseless with our mid and enterprise bundles. It is not an add-on, it is built in. So what you're seeing here is a selection of the distilleries and partners we're proud to work with across the industry. These are businesses operating at scale, managing real complexity and relying on Bottle ERP as part of their operational infrastructure. When asked why Bottle ERP, Nathan from Borders Distillery said, "Through our work with Catalyst ERP, we have delivered a full digital transformation within the distillery, allowing our team to follow the production journey from ingredients through to cask selection, maturation, and eventually bottling. Being able to track and demonstrate the provenance of our whiskey is more important now than ever before, and Bottle ERP allows us to do this seamlessly. At the Borders Distillery, we bring together industry traditions with a forward-thinking approach, allowing us to address consumer demands on a global scale." So we've covered the why and the architecture. So let's move on to the system itself. Imad is going to take you through Bottle ERP and show you how production, cask management, warehouse execution, and compliance operate inside one connected platform. Imad, over to you.
Cheers, Sam. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to, as Sam said, going to go through various different elements as part of this demo. So we're going to start off with some hierarchy stuff, so around reporting, around visibility. The primary part of this demo, as Sam alluded to, is going to be around WMS Go, our warehouse management solution, and then we'll end a little bit on tax and structure around systems as well. So I'm in our system, as Sam mentioned, it's a cloud-based system. It's always online. You're always seeing the latest information. Because we're focusing today around cask management, wood management, we're going to focus around some of the key reports we might be able to get out of the system on that. So one of the first ones we're going to look at is a very standard report that shows us all my bulk stock out of the system. So this is my filled vessels, casks, IBCs, etc., and all the key bits of data that we're seeing against each one. From the asset to the liquid that's inside it, to where is it stored, is it part of a parcel, owned by a customer, all the way down to AYS, fill dates, years, bulk information, and costings as well. And as Sam mentioned, the heart of this system is a finance system. All roads do lead back to finance for us. That enables you to get a lot more information as part of your production process, your overheads, your cash management, your storage, and have that automatically built into the system. So when you are looking at a cask at a LPA at a total level, or you're looking at a margin level when you do bottle, you get that full clarity automatically without having to do any additional steps within the system. And this is my bulk stock report. As I mentioned, we've got various filters to filter it down by various different elements. And I can also look at empty vessels as well, allowing me to see vessels that have come in, the information around each one, the type, the wood type, number of uses, etc., as well as condition going all the way through. And there's multiple ways of ingesting information in the system. I can look at these standard reports out of the system that you might see, or we can look at some more visualizations as well. So the first one we're going to look at is a capacity management solution. So allowing you to manage where your vessels are within a specific location based on the structure that you've set up. So I've got a structure set up against one of my locations. So if I select that, that'll then bring through all the information for my distillation plant, where I've said I've got a capacity for 16,710 casks, of which I'm only storing 16 casks in there. That currently is split into 8 different areas, so bays. Each bay then has its own sub areas. So if I open up Bay A, for instance, I can see that it's got 28 sub areas, a capacity of 2,400. And if I scroll right to the end, I can see I've gone even further and I've gone level as well. So I can open that up and I can see racks and then all the way down to what's in each one. So in a traditional palleted warehouse, for instance, this would be your rows, your columns, your heights, etc. And then finally, where is it on the pallet itself? That allows us to plan for capacity, allows us to see that information in the system, allows us to track where our vessels are internally, if we're storing them, or even externally, if a third party is storing them and you have that information available, allowing you to track that through the system itself. And as I said, that's one of the visualizations around capacity, around vessel management. I can also look at my vessels as well. So my container management itself, where I want to see just information around my vessels, the IBCs, the casks, etc., that I want to track. And I can look at a high level. So on here, I've got a visualization of this cask, which is a blood tub. I've got some whiskey 102 in there at 63.5%. And it's 1 year old. I can see the fill date, etc. If I want any additional information, I can always click through to look at the additional bits around the liquid or even the actual asset itself. One of the key things with us is that we're not only tracking the liquid and the asset, but we are tracking them independently and also together. Because in theory, they can have their own history, they can have their own metrics you want to track, their own bits of information you want to track. The liquid is focused around the ABV, the AYS, the cost, the TCF, all those key metric points, where the asset might be more interested in the valuation, the condition of the asset. Is it reserved for anybody? Is it owned by a customer? Where is it stored in the warehouse structure as well? And having that differentiation and having the linkage allows us to focus more around the granularity when we want to, but also gives us the flexibility to dig into history around the cask or dig into the history around the liquid as we need to as well. And as I mentioned, it's just a hierarchy of all our casks where I use my filters to look at specific ones. And that's some examples of looking at information on the system itself. And you might do this if you're in operations or logistics and you're on office. But if you're working in the warehouse or you're distilling, you're not going to probably want to use this platform. You're going to want to use the mobile solution, where it's much more designed for mobile devices, as Sam mentioned, mobile phones, tablets, device agnostic, and works on any sort of device, and is designed around barcoding. So I've brought that up on here on my browser as just a mimic of my mobile phone. And this warehouse solution covers most of the main areas that you would expect from most warehouse solutions around picking orders, so picking fulfillment, so picking orders for production, receiving stock, moving stock around, but it also has a lot of elements that are specific to this industry around regauging, liquid transfers, vatting, the actual spirit production process as well, and how that works. And we'll take a look at a couple of these as we go through. So if we start right at the top and go for picking, I have different ways that we can pick. So for larger organizations where you might be picking for multiple sales orders at the same time, you can do wave picking, so multiple order picking, or you can keep it super simple and you can do single order picking where you are going to a warehouse to receive stock for a certain order and then you're going to be receiving it. So I've got some orders on here. If I open that one up, I can see sales order 10207 is one I've picked. I've got a whiskey bottle of case of six, sorry, that I need to pick. I need 12 cases of them. It's giving me a list of where that's located. I can then potentially walk up to that location or one of those locations and scan barcodes, or I can just click the start button to be taken to the next stage, where I can then confirm by scanning the bin, by scanning the batch number, where am I taking the stock from, and what lot number am I taking as well. So I can confirm that, say I'm taking 12 of them from there, and then commit that down, and then push that to the system as well. That then allows me to go, okay, now I've committed that, I've picked that, that then goes through to packing, or depending on setup, shipment as well, all through the mobile solution. And because the mobile solution is designed to be real-time information based on what is being seen in the system, but also pushing real-time information back. Whenever an operator does anything on the system, that information is going to go back into Bottle ERP and NetSuite automatically in real time. And regardless of where you are tracking the information in NetSuite, Bottle ERP, or WMS Go, everything and anything is audited on how it happens, where it happens, and who's done it, as well as what's changed. So I can go into any of these fulfillments, any of these receipts, etc., and I can go through and see who's done what on there. Continuing on, some more of the standard inventory management aspects around transfers, item information, so investigating where stock is, adjustments, transfers, movement stock between different locations. And very much like the core system, the mobile solution works on a set of permissions and roles. Each user is given a role or a permission that then determines what they can and can't see, what activities they can and can't do on the mobile solution as well. If we then go into receiving, and then item receipt, that's going to show me a list of purchase orders that I have in the system, and we'll go through and receive one of these. So I've got this purchase order here, PO 10192, where I'm receiving it from Outers & Co. on a specific vendor for two different items, some corks and then some bottles that I can see on here, and it's pending receipt. So I'm waiting for the delivery to come in. If I go back on the handheld solution, I can see that PO there. If I couldn't, I can search by scanning a barcode or typing in the PO number, depending on how many I've got. Going through will then show me the items that are ready to be picked or outstanding, as if it might be in a part shipment. And then depending on what you're receiving in will depend on the information you need to fill out. So for instance, if we go to this bottle, continuing through, this is batch controlled, so we need to give it a batch number. I also need to tell it where am I going to put it in my warehouse based on the structure that's been set up. And then how many did I receive? Did I actually receive 1,000 or did I receive less? So in this case, let's just say we received 1,000 and that's what's coming. I can then go through and add additional items. So if my corks came in as well, I could receive them in, put any additional memos in, make any changes to the items that I've picked, or once I'm happy, complete the receipt, which will then push this information back in real time, back through to the core system, allowing me to see that receipt. If I'd put any memos against there or additional information against there, that would all automatically be forced through as well onto the actual purchase order, allowing me to see that information in real time. So if we go back to my purchase order and give us a refresh, what we'll be able to see is that the status is updated and my purchase order is now pending billing, partially received, because I've received my bottles, but not my corks. And if I go down to the item information, I can see I received 1,000 out of the 1,000 that I requested. And as I mentioned, absolutely everything is audited depending on how far you want to take it. I can then see who's received it, what was the original quantity, did I flag anything, or did I receive it and there was no issues. So keeping that concept of auditability flowing automatically through without asking users to add additional steps or add additional information in, they're just completing their normal processes. And as I mentioned, depending on the item, will depend on what information you need to fill out. So if I go to a different purchase order where I'm receiving in some malt and yeast, if I select my malt as an example, because the item's been set up to be a malt, I'm now also going to not just be setting the batch number and where I'm storing it, but also the firmability, the PSY, soluble extract, and any other information that I might want to track depending on the type of malt or grain or any sort of item I'm bringing in to the system itself. So that's some of the more standard warehouse management solution elements that you would expect from a warehouse solution itself. If we then look at some of the other elements, so container management as an example. So this is all around your wood management, your vessel management, all those operations that you might be carrying out for those processes, from regauges to samples to any sample testing, liquid transfers, where you're emptying a vessel and filling multiple, or vice versa, where you're batting it, and then all the way down to moving vessels around the warehouse and then container information as well. On this one, we're actually going to start at the bottom and we're going to look at container information. So this allows a operator to go up to a barcode or type a barcode in if they're looking for an asset number in, if they're looking for it, and allows them to then select that information. So if I just put in an asset number I've got there, that's then going to load all that information that I can see on the core system, but for the operator themselves, I get a visualization of the actual vessel based off of the current information we have, but then I also get a lot more information that I can dig into. I've got the item, the batch, if it was part of a larger parcel, the current bulk liters, ABV and LPA, based on when it was last checked, the fill and the AYS, if it's been decharred, when was the last time it was regauged, and based on the rules that we've got set up, when is it going to mature enough that we can classify it as whiskey as well, and the status of that. So based on this, 10th of February 2029, and it's currently maturing. If I want to look at more information, I can look at the asset information itself. So the name of the asset, capacity, any tags, but also where is it located. So in this case, this has been set up to be Bay A, level 1, rack 6, and on my pallet, it's position 1, because I've got it set up as pallets. And are there any other parcels, casks as part of this parcel? So when we filled them, did we fill any others and were they grouped together automatically? Yes, I have another one that's been grouped together. And if I'm interested in finding out more information on that, I can just click through onto that link and that will take me to that one instead. Along with being able to see more history information. So when was it regauged? Yes, we got the date, but what was the values that were brought in? If it was sampled, what samples have been taken from it? And did we do an ABV check at that point? Have we added any photos to that asset itself? So have we taken any photos around damages or just condition? And have we flagged it? Or do we want to add any new photos from here as well? So I can just pick a photo because I'm on my laptop. I'm just going to select an image, but if you're on your phone or a tablet, the camera will pop up and then that will get uploaded and then that's going to be brought into the system. Along with being able to do a bit more as well, giving the operator a bit more of control around it, where they can determine the condition of it. So depending on the conditions you've set up and what you want to track, I've just got some basic ones set up around awaiting repair, requires inspection, etc., or if it needs disposal. So I can change this to requires inspection, and then that can get flagged to operations, logistics, or even maintenance to be picked up, along with being able to add any additional notes, being able to see a history of notes against this asset, and then going through and actually creating samples and regauges straight from here as well if I need to. So I can go into here, click on create sample, a regauge. That'll automatically bring up my regauge process where I can say, okay, I've done a check and it's now, instead of 38, it's now 32 is what I've got in there. And the EBV, I've checked it now at 60. And I've done the temperature. My TCF is 1. I'll just keep it simple. The LP is calculated is then 19.2. That can then be processed, completed, and then gone from there. So that gives users the ability to update, control your vessels, your wood, without having to fill out spreadsheets, without having to do duplicate entry, as all that information is stored in the same system. As I do those regauges, as I do those samples, as I update that vessel to have a different condition on, I can see all that information on there. I can then also feed that right back to the system and allow people to see that as well as I need to. And if we have a look at another section of the process, so we go back to container management, and what we'll do is we'll take a look at a liquid transfer. So when we're talking about a liquid transfer, we're talking about movement of liquid, as I mentioned, from one vessel to multiple. So it might be a re-rack, it might be a tanker being emptied, it might be you're emptying your SRWV, whatever variation it might be, we can then take a look at it. I've got an example one that I've set up in the system. Based on the stages I've got set up, when you complete it or when an operator completes it, it does require approval. That is currently set up within the system to ensure all the information is being filled out. But on here, I can see the status is in progress. I can see the existing vessel I'm currently emptying, the existing information based on the vessel that I'm emptying, and then any vessels that have been filled already and who they've been filled by. And then if I go back to the actual platform, open that one up, I can then see that same sort of information, but reduced down to just showing me the core bits. If I then look for a empty vessel, so give me a second and I will find a empty vessel for us to fill. So I can use my empty containers report. Again, I would normally expect you to scan those barcodes, which we can generate out of the system as well, where we generate QR codes that can be scanned for various different elements around your bins for your finished stock, your liquid, your casks, your samples, whatever it might be, we can generate the labels for as well. So if I select this vessel, that's then come through. It's got a capacity of 40 litres. That's the vessel. I can then, based on my setup, I need to add a batch number for the liquid. So my fill station gives me a unique reference. So I'm just going to put that in to give it clarity. I can then say how much we filled it in. 39.8. Submit that. And in real time, that'll then get pushed back into the platform with that information. So if we have a look at the liquid transfer now, we can see it's still in progress, but now it's added the second one based on what I've said for that number instead. And then once I'm happy with all the fills that I've done, let's say I've completed it, I can mark it as completed, determine if there's anything remaining in the original vessel. I'm going to say I emptied it, complete it down, and then that's going to move from the list. And again, if we now go into the actual system and refresh, we can see completed, but it's awaiting approval and who it's completed by. If I wanted to approve it, I can then go through and I can have a look at the information. When I go through to approve it, it's then going to give me a warning that actually you are going to lose quite a lot of LPA, so 558 litres as part of this process. I can either choose to accept it and it's going to mark my name against it, or I can choose to push it back to the mobile users by changing it back to in progress and getting them to validate to make sure the information is correct. But let's say I'm happy with it. I can then save that down and then that will get processed and make those changes and empty that vessel in the system and fill the other two vessels automatically for me. So the idea is you are filling all the information out on the mobile solution, getting the operators, the warehouse operators, the distillers, etc., to fill out the information on the mobile solution. which then directly feeds into the system, or you're setting up elements in the system itself, and then that is getting fed back into the mobile solution. So that's most of some of the container management elements. The last part is around spirit production. So when we're talking about spirit production, we are talking about the full spirit production end to end. So milling, mashing, fermentation, etc., all the way to distillation or dilution, should I say. And the way that we've set it up is to allow you to have flexibility on how your processes work and what sort of information you're tracking. So for instance, if we go into milling, we can see I've already started this milling record because I've put a start date on it. I've got it set up as week commencing 41. It's my first mash or my first mill, depending on how I'm working it, depending on the setup I've got. As of right now, I've just said I've started this. I can then go through and I can put in my batch information. So in this case, what silo have I gotten my malt from? And then I can put in any checks that I'm doing depending on the setup. And this is all customizable and configurable on a client by client basis. And you can pick and choose what information people have to fill out and when they have to fill out. And as I can see here, I've got some red asterisks to say that these fields are required. If I don't fill them in, it's going to force me to fill them in before I can continue, or I can always add any notes if I need to as well. And this information is going to get pushed back into the system as with all other areas in real time to ensure I can see that information as always. And because I've just selected the actual area that I'm getting my malt from, I've not said how much I've used or how much I've gone. I can go back into it. I can then, with this blue field, I can then say, okay, I took 1,500 kilograms. That's how much we used as part of this process. And that's going to continue. Now, because I've actually received some, I can then go through and complete my mill. But let's say there was an issue as part of my billing. There's something wrong with the malt or there's something wrong with one of the feeders. I have this little flag at the top, which allows me to flag different faults depending on what faults I want to track. So I can just say that there was an issue with the shaker box and it was a high husk, for instance. I can put any comments against it, log the fault, and that'll then get pushed into the system with my name and any comments against it all automatically logged for you. That allows you to see your faults, start tracking trends, and again, it just gives the power to the user and the actual distillers and operators to push information back and to help feed each other information and make their lives easier, but also allow you to see where there are potential efficiency gains or potential problems in the manufacturing or even any other process in the system. And on here, just to complete it, I can mark this as right now, I've ended it, and I can save that down, and then that will then go through, asking me for confirmation. Have I actually completed it? Did I save it by accident? And then go from there. And I can continue this all the way down to other stages. So going to the mashing, for instance, where I've got a mash on here that I haven't started yet, but it's pending. So week commencing 40 mil 2, where I can see the strike time was X. Again, all the fields and all the information that you want to track are completely up to you. Where now it's got a slightly different setup because the mash is a bit more involved. I can select my washback, where depending on the ones that I've got available in the system. So I'm just going to select washback 2 because that's where I want it to go. And all this again is feeding back into the system in real time. So if I do have a distillery manager or operations lead that wants to see this information, I can easily see it. On here, again, just like every other page, I have the ability to log faults. Because on here we're mashing, I can go through, I can put in my waters. So I'm just using 20 as my value for everything just for now to make it simpler. And I can see my first water. I can choose when I want to pitch my yeast. I can go back into my first waters, add in any additional information that I've said I need to complete. Say that I've received or done this amount of waters, started the drain at a certain time, saved it, come back to it, gives me a warning saying I can't complete the full process until I put an end time, but I can leave this page if I want to. It's going to mark it as in progress. I can come back to it at any stage if I need to and put in the drain time. Again, always giving the user the ability to put any additional notes in that is needed as required. And then that gets completed all the way down to pitching your yeast, doing multiple waters, doing your first dip as part of the fermentation, doing your draft output. All of this is tracked in the system for you, depending on what you want to track. And again, in this case, I've got this set up, so I'm selecting an area, I'm selecting the temperature of my yeast, selecting how much I've used, and then saving that down. And then I can continue all the way through the actual process. Now, if we take a look at a different one, I've got my fermentation, my washback, my mash run distillation, my spirit distillation. All these processes that we have in the system are all completely configurable depending on what you do and don't want to track, what information you want to see, and where you want to see it. So on here, for instance, I've got the ability to have some checks in as an initial stage through my washback around valves checking. When did I charge it? Have I added it anti-foam? What time did I charge it? Have I cleaned the exchanger, etc. Just different checks that I can have before I get into actually filling the actual still and going from there and then tracking all the information around that, around selecting this still if you've got multiple stills, or having the system selected automatically if there is one. Going through and tracking all the different stages as part of the process for wash run, for spirit distillation, to tracking the different data sets, being able to report on all of that, because it's going into the system in real time and it's all being tracked automatically based on the final user putting the information in directly into one system. It allows you to see that information and get more trust with the system because it's all live, it's all cloud-based, it's all real time. So that concludes our demo on the WMS Go element of it. As I mentioned, it does a lot of the elements around warehousing, around receiving, fulfillment, vessel management, regauges, samples, testing, liquid transfers, etc., as well as giving the operator the ability to just investigate a vessel and see information about it, and then the full spirit production process and giving you flexibility on how that works. So that's our second point of the agenda. In terms of the tracking and the auditability of the system and the last element of the live demo, there's various reports as we started looking at right at the start around cask management, wood management, around those processes. But we also have various reports around LPA tracking, being it LP in, LP out, LPA that might be in transit, any gains and losses that you might have had. So as we saw on the liquid transfer, we had the system automatically flag the LPA loss that we were about to hit. That is true for every single process in the actual system where we track the gain, the loss, whatever it might be, through the system automatically, going all the way through to duty management, HMRC integration to allow you to submit your W5, your W5D, etc. into the system, EMCS integration, allowing you to book your movements directly within the system itself. There's a wide variety of functionality around HMRC, auditability, flexibility that allows you to see that information where and when you want to. And as I mentioned, all this information is fed in from the individual stages, allowing you to see the different processes depending on who's filling it out, when it's been filled out, what's been filled out, etc., which then allows you to get this real-time reporting for that information as well. So that concludes the live demo. I'm just going to get Sam to share his screen again, and we'll just go back to the PowerPoint. Cool. So just to conclude this section of the demo, so just a couple final points around architecture and some of the possibilities that you have. So what we've got here is what some of our customers or what we see in the industry around architecture people have. So multiple systems for various different elements. So be it one distillery, multiple site distilleries, multiple sites for bonded warehouses. We run into the same sort of issues where you're having Excel for your purchase order management or your manufacturing. You're having a vessel management solution separate to your core ERP. Your finance system is completely segregated to all your different other systems. And what you end up with is one-way connections, data that sits in one system but doesn't sit in another. And then you're having people manually copy information from one system to another, disconnecting everything and then losing the truth of the actual data potentially as it moves through. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this is an example of where we can plug into that gap. And there's two different varieties. So this first example is where we're plugging into an existing ERP. So you're still using the power of Bottle ERP to manage your production, to manage your cash management, your wood management, your cost management, your purchase order management. But all that is fed into a ERP separately, if that's something such as part of like a conglomerate, where you need to track all those financial data sets in a core system still, but separately from a production system where it might need it. And we can do that through this, where we can have two-way connections because we are one platform. We do have that two-way connection already for the manufacturing, the warehouse management, the purchase management, sales management, stock management. And then we already are tracking the financial elements of it and being able to pass that back and forth between an ERP, being able to communicate for a larger demand, for a larger supply plan. It allows us to get much more accurate reporting and gives you a single source of truth. And then if we flip to the last one, please, mate. This is where actually you just keep it all in one system instead. So instead of us connecting into a third or a second ERP, the actual platform has, as we said a couple of times, is finance at its heart. So we do have the full capability of handling your finances, your purchasing, your sales, your cask management, your vessel management, all the way through to all the different operations. And we treat this as a true grain to glass solution that allows you to not only have those traceabilities, but also report on it and then be able to get that information back out of the system, be able to provide that to your customers and provide the value to your customers as well. That concludes my section, so I'll pass over to Sam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Imad. So let's take a step back and recap what we've covered. So first, the shift from legacy systems to cloud infrastructure and why that matters. Second, an operations first approach to bulk spirit and cask tracking. Third, warehouse execution through WMS Go, closing the gap between physical movement and digital accuracy. And finally, automated compliance. So your duty, LPA, and reporting driven directly from operational data. So what this really represents is infrastructure built for scale. One connected platform, one data model, and one source of the truth. So all of that has been designed to support growth without increasing that operational risk. That's the contrast. So that's the overview. Infrastructure, operations, and compliance working as one connected engine. We've covered a lot of ground today, so let's open it up. What questions can we answer for you? So we've had a couple of questions already come in. So the first question would be, how far can you go in terms of capacity management? Is there a restriction on the type of storage, or can it support multiple types? Imad?
Yeah, so in the example I showed you was for a palleted warehouse, in essence. So 6 casks to a single pallet, rows and columns, as I mentioned as I was going through it. But there is no sort of really restriction to the process. If it's palletized, if it's racked, if it's stored in any sort of really way, we can build in the capacity and the actual plan for the warehouse. So when you are potentially the operator and you want to find a specific vessel, you can type or scan a barcode. That'll then give you a walking path of where that vessel is located, as I said, a pallet, rack, otherwise.
Amazing, thank you. And the other question we had was, how configurable is the production process in terms of data and stages?
Yeah, so I showed you briefly on that demo, milling, mashing, and then jump through to wash run, washback run. The idea of the process and the platform is to be very configurable, especially for different distilleries, because different distilleries will have different needs in terms of they maybe need to do 2 mills before they can fill a washback, or doing 2 spirit distillations, or you might have a unique process to you. The entire idea is that it is completely configurable. So we're not talking about customizing the system to allow you to do that. We are talking about changing some settings, adding some additional steps so that you can go, actually, I do 2 mills instead of doing 1 mill. I do a mash and then I do fermentation, but then when I get to distillation, I do it twice because my stills can't handle that capacity. There's a lot of flexibility in that. As with the data that you are tracking in each stage, It is completely up to you what you want to track. We start with best practice from what we've seen in the industry for each stage. So we give you that at the outset, and we recommend you start with that. And then it's up to you. If you want to track at that level, want to track more, want to track a little bit less, how do you want to track it? Because the more you track or the information you track will then just follow back into the system as well, as I said, in real time, giving you that flexibility and that reporting to allow you to see the trends on AYS to PSY, various different elements on that process, really.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Can't see any other questions, so I will keep going for now. And if there are any other questions, please reach out. So if today has sparked ideas or raised some conversations that you'd like to continue in person, we host our annual Spirits Leaders event in June, focusing on leadership, innovation and growth in the spirits industry. So day one is the golf day, coined the Scotch Open, open to all abilities of golf, trust me. Hosted at the Dalmahoy Golf Club, and day two is our leadership summit at the Scotch Whisky Experience in Edinburgh. So to clarify and make it really, really simple, this is not a product event. It's about bringing together forward-thinking producers and industry leaders to have honest conversations about scaling, finance, ops, and the future of the sector, with some really great speakers such as Foxy from SAS, Who Dares Wins. So if you are interested, you can scan the QR code and register your interest. Alternatively, reach out to myself, as we'd love to see you there. So if anything you've seen today resonates, we would love to continue the conversation. So whether that's a deeper operational walkthrough, a systems discovery discussion, or simply exploring whether this is the right timing for your business, you can reach me directly on the details here, and equally feel free to connect on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'd just like to say thank you again for your time and engagement, and look forward to speaking with you. Thanks again.